Oh, hello. My name is Justin Allan-Spencer, and welcome to COVID Quarantine Crafting, Icelandic Edition. This video is the first in a series exploring traditional Icelandic embroidery techniques. If you would like to stitch along, a variety of corresponding project kits can be found at the National Nordic Museum store at nnmsture.org. Beautiful Iceland, home to björk, siguros, eyjafjallajökull, and lots of sheep. So many sheep, in fact, these four-legged mops outnumber their bipedal buddies 3-1. For centuries, Icelandic fortunes, which until quite recently were more missed than hit, have been tied closely to these shaggy little ruminants. Farming sheep and wool processing was, along with fishing, the primary economic activity in Iceland for centuries. In addition to food and clothing, Icelandic sheep have provided the raw materials for creative expression in the form of knitting, weaving, and embroidery. The importance of wool and woolen goods extends way back to the Viking era. The Vikings would never have been such wide-ranging explorers without woolen sails. Archaeologists estimate it could take up to 4 years' worth of labor to create one sail. Woven woolens were so valuable they were used as a type of money. During the Catholic era, nuns and women from the small handful of wealthy families practiced embroidery, their embellished cloths decorating church altars, religious items, and priestly garb. Evidence suggests that secular items were also created, though none have survived. Following the Reformation in 1550, well-to-do women and the wives and daughters of religious leaders continued embroidery traditions. Everyday items including bed coverings, saddle blankets, handkerchiefs, and seat cushions have luckily survived. Because of the high cost of imported goods, Icelandic needleworkers relied heavily on domestically produced yarns and fabrics. Starting in the 18th century, needleworkers, weavers, and artisans began to record patterns in hand-drawn manuscripts. 10 such manuscripts are known to exist and contain a variety of floral, faunal, abstract, and alphabetic patterns. Many of the patterns are common in all Nordic countries. We can therefore define traditional Icelandic embroidery as the techniques, materials, and patterns used between the late 14th and late 19th centuries. Traditional Icelandic needleworkers employed 3 main techniques: freehand, counted grid, and drawn threadwork. The freehand technique, known in Icelandic as refilsaumur, is the same technique that decorates the 11th century 230-foot-long Bayeux tapestry. This technique was used on approximately a dozen pieces of early Icelandic embroidery. For more information about refilsaumur techniques, be sure to check out Icelandic Saga Embroidery Series by Claudia Pettersson, available on the National Nordic Museum YouTube channel. Another freehand technique still in use today is blomstersaumur, or flower stitch. A variation of this technique, called baldering, is worked in gilded metallic thread. Both methods are used today to decorate the traditional national woman's costume. Counted grid techniques were also used. The most common stitch is the long-armed cross-stitch, which in Icelandic is called both flettasaumur, or braided stitch, and gamli krossaumurin, or the old cross-stitch. In Swedish, the stitch is called tvistum, taking its name from the weave of fabric commonly used. Augensaumur, or eye stitch, may be familiar to practitioners of hardanger embroidery. 3 variations of this stitch, 1 square and 2 diamond versions, were used on bed coverings and cushions. In a nation as poor as pre-independence Iceland, darning was an essential skill to extend the life of damaged clothing. Darning stitches could also be used for ornamentation. Square darning stitches, glitsaumur, decorated bed valances and altar coverings. Skakaglettsøymer, slanted darning stitch, or smyk in Norwegian, was used on borders. Pelsøymer, known in English as Florentine stitch, was a seldom-used stitch used primarily for adding lettering to embroidered pieces. A large portion of the extant needlework consists of drawn thread and darn network called sprang. These lace-like pieces were worked entirely in white, though a few polychromatic pieces, called rithsprang, exist. Thank you for joining me for this brief history of traditional Icelandic needlework. In our next episode, we'll take a look at traditional materials and their modern analogs. Today's episode was brought to you by the National Nordic Museum, Black Sheep Needleworks, the lifelong work of Iceland's needlework expert Elsa Gudmundsson, and the letter Thorn. Until next time, stay sane, stay safe, wash your hands, and wear a mask.